Bella Vista Gardening TV show. I'm Geri Hoerner, and with me today is Brian Grosnickle, and he is a fellow Bella Vista Garden Club member, and he also owns Village Garden and Landscape in Trafalgar and Kingsland in Bella Vista. And today we're going to be talking about planting bulbs and the various bulbs that we have to show you here. We have a lot of show and tell today. And we also talk about what is needed to do in your garden in November, what you need to do for the month. And there's not too many upcoming events we can talk about in November. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. The Bella Vista Garden Club did have its plant sale on November 8th, I believe, on a Saturday. And if you didn't make the sale, they still have the leftover plants at Village Wastewater, and that's off Highway 71. And you can buy the plants there from 9 to 3, I believe, Monday through Friday. So we do still have some plants, and it's still November's a good time to be planting trees and shrubs and some perennials. It's still fairly nice weather, and I'm glad to see we have some color.
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't think we'd have any color after this horrendous summer.
Heat and drought, I think just about did things in.
But I think the peak was about the end of October.
Yeah.
And there's still a few, beautiful specimens out there here and there. So it was a wonderful fall for considering the weather we've had. The other thing, it's time for the Master Gardener sign up, and they sign up for classes in January. They have their classes at the Center for Nonprofits, I believe.
It's in Bentonville?
In Rogers,
in
at
Rogers.
the old St. Mary's Hospital.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's in January, and I think, Brian, you should really go to that program. It's a wonderful program.
I'm going to look into it.
It's 40 hours of classroom in January during the day. I think it's 2 days a week. And you just learn so much. There's just wonderful instructors, and it's a great program. So if you have any interest in that, you can call the Extension office at 271-1060, ask for an application, they'll send one out to you. And they still have some openings, I believe. It's early November, and I think they still have some openings, but they'll be filling up. So it's a great program to get involved in. And since we're talking about bulbs today, the Master Gardeners do have the Meet the Master segments that they provide. And today we're going to be going to John Stryker's garden and seeing his Meet the Master segment. He lives in Bella Vista, has thousands of bulbs that bloom in the spring. And
there's a lot of work.
Well, once you get them established, I guess they're not too much. Just cleaning up the leaves out of them. But, the thing is, they keep multiplying.
Yeah.
And this DVD was taken in 2010. I think it was filmed in 2010, so he even has more bulbs now. So he's being introduced by Alice Cunningham, and she is a fellow Master Gardener at the time. And let's go take a visit and see John Stryker's garden.
Welcome to Meet the Masters. We're at the home of John Stryker, on his deck enjoying a cup of coffee and the view of Lake Lomond. John has been a Master Gardener since the year 2000, and he is our local meteorologist. I visited John a couple of years ago to see his daffodil garden, and now I'm looking forward to seeing his summer garden. Hello, John.
Hello, Alice.
I see that we're being serenaded by a wren, and I understand there's some babies over here in one of your nests.
Yes, the babies hatched out earlier this week, and she's been feeding them, and we're interrupting her feeding cycle, I'm sure.
Well, we'll have to get busy here.
We've lived on the property for 5 years. The garden is 3 to 4 years old. It started as soon as the property was finished, and first garden was a daffodil garden. Back in my early years of gardening, my first few years of gardening, I had daffodils and tulips in Nebraska. I took those with me to Illinois when I got transferred, and then took them back to Nebraska again, along with some iris and daylilies that I had brought along. And I brought a whole trailer load of plants down to Arkansas in the first home, and I've put a daffodil garden in, very first thing that I've put in here. I had 3,000 in bloom last year, probably close to 5,000 this spring, and if they do well this summer, don't completely disappear in the ground, I'll probably have close to 6,000, maybe 7,000 this next spring. My garden style is basically eclectic. I've got terrain problems in my housing area because of the slope of the land that we have here in Bella Vista. I've got hot spots where the sun shines constantly. I've got shady areas where normal plants will not thrive. So it's a very mixed bag that I've got. I've got rock gardens, I've got blooming gardens, and bulb gardens. Water problems is one of the biggest challenges. When we have a 3 or 4 inch rain and you're living on a slope, you have to do something if you want plants to not wash down that slope. And that is designing the garden perpendicular to the flow of the water, and so that the water hits the level and spreads out and then slowly goes down into the next level down. My favorite perennial is my moonflower. It was a flower that I was given at the first rose picnic that we had back in the year of 2000. I'm trying to remember exactly the shock that I had when our host pulled it out of the ground bare root and said, "Here, take it and plant it." And I said, "Don't I need to wrap it up or put it in water or something?" And she said, "No, it'll survive." And so I walked over and put it in the back seat of the car. I put a napkin over it, over the roots, trying to protect it because of my sense of, I know I'm going to kill it. But I took it home, planted it, and it produced magnificently. I just couldn't believe how it came back and started blooming on me. My mother was a major gardener on the farm as I was growing up. Some of my worst memories are the torture that I went through in the strawberry patch of weeding it and picking strawberries, because I liked wild strawberries better than domestic strawberries, and my sister just loved the domestic strawberries, so she'd eat as many as she picked, and picked faster than I did since she was a couple of years older than I am. So I can remember getting a lot of headaches bending over and picking strawberries and pulling weeds. Probably the thing I don't talk about a whole lot is why I became a meteorologist. And one early morning, my father got us up out of bed 6 o'clock in the morning and said, "We've got to get out and get the last 5 acres of the corn planted because rain's coming today." And about 8 o'clock, we'd been out in the field for over an hour, and he had about half the corn planted, and the clouds were getting lower and moving faster, and here came a black blob of weather across the valley to the south of us. And I said, "My God, Dad, look." And he turned around and he said, "Get the truck into the barn." I got down to a small creek that we have running through the south end of the farm, came up the bank on the other side, and I lost control of the vehicle. And I was going sideways, and I was trying to turn into the skid, and nothing was happening. And I looked out, and I realized I was about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. And I opened the door to step out and looked, and the truck was hanging over the cliff that we have on the road. It was about a 50-foot cliff. And my dad finally came back on the other tractor, and he said, "You wouldn't believe what happened." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The barn's gone." As a meteorologist, which this helped me become a meteorologist, but basically as a meteorologist, about 5 or 6 years ago, somebody named this phenomena that I saw coming at us a wedge tornado. These things are usually a quarter of a mile to a half a mile wide. It had been only a few hundred feet wide when it came across the river valley before it came up the hill to our farm, and it just spread out as it came up into the farm buildings. The house was on the southern side of the tornado, the barn was in the center of it, and I was on the northern side of it.
Wasn't that inspirational?
Wonderful.
I'll tell you, it makes you want to plant these bulbs because that's what you end up with in the
is a great
spring.
yard.
But the only problem is, you know, you have to plant them in November and
Yeah.
December to have that kind of a show in the spring. So John's very inspirational. And this is the time to be planting bulbs, and there's so many varieties of different bulbs. And you have some examples here to show us. The caladiums.
Now the caladiums, that we start these in the spring, but if you did want to have something to overwinter, if you do have the caladium bulbs, and it's real easy, just get them started. You need to de-eye them. There's little eyelets on each one. Make sure you plant it the flat side down. But
It's amazing that that turns into that. It
yeah,
really
there's I think
is.
2 or 3 bulbs in this, and we just leave them in the greenhouse over the winter, but I mean, they are for sale. I've had quite a few people come in that just want to have some color.
So if you have like a sun porch or
An east-facing
east-facing
window,
you
or
can winter
any
them
room
over.
that has filtered light, they can't take the direct sun. But as long as it's above 36 degrees, they'll be
I
fine.
really don't have a place to winter over my caladiums, but that is a good idea to have some color in them.
Well, it gives us some year-round green.
Right. And the other bulbs, there's tulips and there's daffodils. Now tulips are not as good a bulb for us in Arkansas. Tulips just don't do as well. As
If you have them in a raised bed where they get a little bit of protection,
Yeah.
they'll do all right.
you almost have to treat some of them as annuals. I put them in and then
Yeah.
next year they're gone and the squirrels get them.
Oh yeah, that's
You
a
know, the
treat
squirrels
for a
like
squirrel.
the tulips.
Now,
But
if you
it's-
do use a daffodil, that's one thing that the squirrels, this is poisonous to them, and you
They
put
don't
these on the border. I get all our bulbs from Netherland Bulb Company out of Pennsylvania, and they're a good size, a 14 to 16 centimeter bulb, and they've got a lot of variety, a lot of color, and again,
And that's what
something.
you look for, is some good, healthy, big bulbs.
Yeah.
You don't want to buy those little
The
tiny
little tiny
ones. You're
ones
not
will
gonna
just
get-
rot before
yeah.
they really get a chance to come out. but-
And you can see here, there's so many different varieties of bulbs available. There's crocus, there's tulips, there's just a big variety. And also, they bloom at different times.
That's the nice thing about them, is that you can have like the snow crocus early, and then your jonquils and daffodils will come out, and then the tulips, some of the early tulips, hyacinth. That's always when I think spring has finally got here, is when
Right.
you have a nice variety of hyacinth come out.
And you have a planter there,
This is a handy little bulb digger if you have a raised bed.
if you have a raised bed.
It's easy just to use this to dig and then let the handle go, and that'll take the dirt out. But if you don't have a raised bed, you may as well forget it. But that does save a lot of time.
Right, I have one of those. I brought it from St. Louis, and it's just gathering rust in my shed because
use it
I
as a
can't use
decoration.
it in my raised beds. But if you try to use that in the ground here, it's just you know you go in about so far and that's it.
Yeah.
So, but it is a great tool if you have a raised bed or really
Yeah.
soft ground. Now there was something else you got started here. You started these crocus, and I think you have this at your.
Yeah, it comes in the container itself. All you do is take it out of the package, put the dirt in the ground or in the container, and set the bulbs in, and then you'll have those. Those will last probably a good 2 months or so, but depends on when you start it. You know, a lot of people like to have some color in January or December even.
Right.
And if you got just a small little kitchen window or a small space that would fit, that would give you some
Because
color.
this is wonderful, because in addition to having the crocus, the saffron comes with it
The stamens.
The little stamens are your saffron. So if you like to cook with saffron, you can grow these, get your own saffron, which is like $1,000 a pound, and you can get your own saffron from these bulbs. The other thing you started a couple weeks ago was the amaryllis. Now this is a gorgeous amaryllis bulb, and this will bloom when?
That's probably about mid to late December, generally
So
around
probably
Christmas.
around
is when you have-
Christmas. So you started this a week ago?
A week ago today.
Okay, and so that'd been like the last week of October, and then you'll be getting ready to put this in dirt, a dirt pot.
I've got some in dirt already. I just did this to see
show
how
the
the root
roots.
system develops.
So once you get that planted in a pot, you would plant it in a pot about this big, right?
Probably a little bit bigger, because that
Just a
does
little
have
bit of dirt around it, but you don't want to bury the whole thing.
about 2/3 of it you want to leave exposed.
So you want to leave this part showing.
The crown and then the stem.
Crown and the stem, and then
Yeah.
your green will come out, and then your blooms will come out
And
around
you
Christmas.
get about a good 2 to 3 foot stem, and each one will have 5 to 6 really good sized.
They're
I
outstanding.
had one that I left out outside last summer, and I probably could have sold 100 of them if I would have had more, because it really is a showstopper.
It really is. It's great for Christmas.
Yeah.
So, but it's just so interesting to see all the different bulbs. There's a couple websites you can go to. You mentioned the Netherland Bulb Company.
That's who we get ours from, and I've had such good luck because they're a bigger bulb. They take a little longer to grow them, and it's not something you find at Walmart or Home Depot or Lowe's. I mean, they specialize, and that's all they do is grow top quality bulbs.
And you have different varieties too.
Oh, hundreds.
Hundreds of
There's many different things you can imagine.
Because a lot of people just think, you plant the daffodils and they're just yellow, or they're yellow and white. There's just
Oh, they've got
hundreds
pink and
of
white,
varieties.
pink and green, yellow,
There's some orange
cream-colored,
ones.
pure white,
Yeah,
just about every color you can imagine.
yeah, they're wonderful. And then there's also a couple bulb companies that I received from the director at Compton Gardens. And she said that she uses Van Engelen and John Sheepers. And you've used John Sheepers too, haven't you?
They've got some good quality bulbs.
They're a little more expensive, but
Yeah.
they're
And it was hard to
good
get.
quality.
There's certain things that they might not have them every year. If a crop
Right.
fails, then Netherland bulb, I've just been pleased with them because they're consistent. I've never had a shortage. I've never had a cancellation. I've never had a crop
Oh,
fail.
that's good.
I don't know if it's the growing conditions in Holland are more favorable, or they have a general
Well,
winter.
Holland is where they all come from,
Yeah.
usually. And Brent and Becky's is another nursery. I think that's pretty good to a good source. And we'll have those sources on the Bella Vista Garden Club website, so you can check there and see about getting into those websites. And you've been doing bulbs at the nursery for a long time.
Oh, 6, 7 years now.
6, 7 years.
Yeah.
So you really know bulbs. So if you have any questions about bulbs, you can certainly get to Brian and ask, and he'll have an answer for you. And also, you do have some supplements too.
There's several different products. Right now, I'd probably say the most important thing to do for an acid-loving plant, whether it be Japanese maple or an azalea or rhododendron, give it a good healthy dose of muric acid before, generally Thanksgiving is before we fertilize everything. But this will help feed them over the winter before they really go to sleep. A lot of the, for spring flowers, the bulbs, they like the blood meal or the dried blood. You just mix that according to directions, but it promotes a vigorous root system now, so that once they do wake back up, that they really come out and they really pop.
Right. And I
come
understand
spring.
that the squirrels don't like the blood,
They don't like the blood. Now, the bone meal I have found,
but they do like that.
this has got phosphorus in it, and this is probably going to be the last year you're going to see phosphorus in a lot of commercial products. The EPA has gotten involved, and they deem it hazardous to the environment. Even Miracle Grow is being reformulated that does not contain phosphorus of any kind. Milorganite, which is a common fertilizer, it will be the only product because it's a natural and it's biodegradable that will contain phosphorus.
Okay, so when you talk about phosphorus, there's the 3 numbers on the bag
I believe
on
phosphorus
fertilizer.
is the second.
And phosphorus is always the second number. So the first number is your nitrogen.
Your nitrogen and
And the
phosphorus.
second is
phosphate.
phosphorus. And the third is your potash. So the third number kind of develops your root system sometimes too. So the phosphorus is what's the problem.
Yeah.
Is there's too much phosphorus being put down in gardens and on golf courses, and it's just running into the water systems, and it's just a bad situation. So since it's been overused, we've now gotten to the point where they're not going to let us use it at all. There were some states, I think up north, that did pass some laws where you couldn't even buy phosphorus unless you had a soil test that showed that your soil needed phosphorus. And I guess the EPA's gone past that, where they're just not going to let you buy it at all.
Yeah.
So you'll have to get it naturally through your compost and your natural sources.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good thing, to get back to natural.
Yeah.
So the other thing we need to talk about is what we need to do in our gardens in November. So other than planting bulbs, we do have some other things that need to be done. Now, you can still plant your bulbs probably all through November. I've already planted them as late as January, if it was mild, but they come up later.
Yeah.
So, but the best time to do it is November. It's a good time. They'll get a good root system before it gets really cold. And the other items we need to talk about then are the annuals and the herbs. The annuals are gone. You can plant snapdragons and pansies for winter.
Pansies are doing real well right now.
And also, have you got kale and
The kale that we got in, it wasn't very big, and I wasn't impressed with it, so I just stuck with pansies. I got extra on those.
Pansies will give you a lot of color over the winter, and they'll kind of shrivel up a little when it gets really cold, but they'll pop back up when you have a little sunny day. So your tropicals.
If they're not in the greenhouse or you don't have them in the house by now, the show's going to be over on
They're
those.
gone.
Yeah, less than 36 degrees, and that's just not a good thing.
Right, but once you have them in, they're fine for the winter.
Yeah.
And your perennials, the mums are still showing some color. There's still some mums out there. Some of them I've seen at the nursery still in bud form. So there's still going to be some bloom through probably the month of November. And you'll make the birds happy if you just leave some of your stems and seed heads on some of your perennials, and that helps feed the birds.
Oh, sure.
And you can all cut them all back, or you can leave some of the seed pods for the birds. And don't forget to feed the birds over the winter. They really need the protein and the suet, and they need the seeds to keep them going over the winter, along with the shelter with the trees and shrubs. And the roses, there's not much you can do with the roses, but you need to remulch your roses after a couple freezes. After that ground gets a little cold, be sure and mulch them. And if they're really tall, you may want to cut them back just about 3 foot so they don't rock in the wind and become uprooted. So that's what all you have to do for your roses. You can put the dormant oil on after they have been defoliated, and that kind of helps with your disease control over
Doesn't hurt to fertilize them now, too. So they can get a little nutrient before they go to sleep.
If you want to put some compost, is good. But I don't know if I'd put anything strong on, because you don't want to encourage any new growth, but you just want to get them in for the winter, and maybe some compost let that settle in over the winter. And then as far as lawns go,
this would be the perfect time to get them winterized, get your irrigation system winterized. We get a few cold nights where it's going to get down, but and if you have Bermuda, it's already going dormant.
Right.
Make sure the hoses are drained, the spigots covered. Roll up the hoses and put those in place where they'll overwinter. As far as the leaves, you don't want to leave those on your lawn.
They'll
as soon as those come down, that causes a lot of problems. Probably call and make sure the stump dump's open. Generally speaking, you can go there Monday through Friday, and sometimes it's open on Saturday, but I know if it's muddy and wet, they don't open.
Yeah. But it's a good place to get rid of your leaves.
Oh, absolutely. That and debris, things of that nature. You don't want to blow them into the lake. That's something that they highly discourage. Christmas trees are all right, but you don't want to put lawn debris and things of that nature into the lake.
Yeah.
If you do want to burn, you always want to call the fire department to make sure that there's not a burn ban on, but also they'll tell you to make sure you have a hose ready, and if it's on a fairly windy day, then they won't allow it. So The best thing you can do is just shred them. We use a lot of them for mulch, especially pine needles around the azaleas, pine needles over the hydrangeas, things of that nature, and that gives them kind of a slow release as they dissolve over the winter. It'll help feed the plant.
It feeds the plant, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a great mulch if you just shred them.
Yeah.
And if you put them on, just, you know, I blow a lot of leaves into my beds, and I don't mess with them until spring. But if you get a real heavy layer, sometimes the moisture can't get down there to the plant over the winter. So, and if you have a dry winter, it could be even worse. So you do want to have them shredded so that the water can penetrate down through the leaves. You know, and it's still a good time in November to do trees and shrubs, to plant trees and shrubs, and you still have a big variety of trees and shrubs available. And it's been really great weather the first part of November, and I think the forecast is going to be good for the month.
Looks like the next day or two it might be a little cold, but
yeah, I think it's up and downs. But, but you just have to monitor your water too. When you plant those trees in November, you have to be sure that you monitor that water over the winter, and make sure they get enough water. You know, when it's
until they're established.
Right. Yeah. And the vegetables weren't too good this year. Well, you had a good crop of
cucumbers went berserk, but tomatoes, I couldn't get a tomato to grow. It was too humid, and they'd flower out, and the next day the flower was gone. Potatoes were good early spring, but tomatoes didn't do a thing. Green peppers were small.
It's not a good year with that heat and drought.
It wasn't.
You know.
We just couldn't water enough, and just didn't like it.
Okay. So I guess the main thing is to enjoy your fall color. And if it's a nice day, kind of take your little hot cider outside and look at your garden and see where you need to plant your bulbs. It's a good time to kind of figure out where you want that color for the spring.
For next year.
And just enjoy your garden. I mean, most people are just working in their garden all the time, and they really don't take the time to enjoy it year-round. And it is a year-round thing. And if you have your evergreens into your beds, you'll have some color in the winter instead of just everything just de-leafed and deciduous. So if you mix some evergreens into your bed, you'll have some cover for the birds in the winter and also some fall color. So if you have any other questions about gardening in November, you can check the website at the Master Gardener website, and that's the BentonCountyGardening.org. And also the Garden Club's website has a lot of good information on it. It's BellaVistaGardenClub.com, and there's just a wealth of information there, and it's easy to find. And Brian, I want to thank you so much for the show and tell today. We had so many good things to see, and if they have any questions, they can come and see about what bulbs you have available.
We've got a real good selection, and they're all reasonably priced.
And
just pretty much whatever they'd be wanting to put in.
That's great, and they'll have a wonderful spring to show after you plant these bulbs. They're easy to plant. So I hope you've enjoyed the show, and until next month, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.